Hey, I'm Transtastic, my name is Luke, and this week's topic is hysterectomies. I'm so sorry I haven't posted recently. This is my last week of university for my undergraduate, so I've just been really focused on the exams, because obviously, with my hysterectomy, which happened about 8 weeks ago, I was kind of thrown off in terms of, my study, so it's been, really hard to get back on track, and my exams are, in the next couple days, and so I was kind of, freaking out a little bit, so I just kind of had to put everything on hold. I kind of went off social media. I needed to focus on my grades, and focus on learning the content so that I can actually pass my exams. So this week's topic is somewhat related to that, considering that's sort of the reason. I'm pretty sure I was the person who suggested this topic, actually. So I had my hysterectomy on the 3rd of September, 2018. So relatively recently. Trigger warning for using, bio term. I had a total laparoscopic hysterectomy with BSO, so that's both of my ovaries removed as well. I want to talk about some of the things that I didn't really think about going into a hysterectomy. There's a lot of stigma in the trans community, partly because, obviously, understandably, it can be dysphoria inducing. It's sort of one of those things that, if you go on testosterone and if you don't have dysphoria around sort of the internal anatomy of yourself, it's something that you can really easily just forget about, and you can just not think about. So I understand why there isn't really much discussion on hysterectomies, because it's not really something that's relevant to a lot of people, and a lot of people don't really feel that it's necessary to discuss, and also it's dysphoria inducing. The only reason I had a hysterectomy is because I need to for my phalloplasty next year. If I didn't need to have a hysterectomy, I probably wouldn't. Not because I don't have dysphoria about that sort of stuff, because I did. I felt uncomfortable having those parts, but not enough to warrant going into surgery. And you don't necessarily have to have a hysterectomy. It really depends. If you're having a vaginectomy, you do need to have a hysterectomy, because if there is anything wrong or anything happens, all of that is kind of obviously sealed up, and so you don't have access to the cervix, so therefore you can't check for cancer. And if for whatever reason you stop going on testosterone and you start menstruating again, there's nowhere for it to go. So they need to remove all of that just as a precaution. As Spencer said in their video, you can keep your ovaries, and same with if you want phalloplasty, you don't have to have your ovaries removed. There are heaps of reasons why people would swing one way or the other. I opted to remove them because I didn't really want them, so I don't have to worry about it ever being an issue, and I'm really glad I did that. It's been quite relieving. Having a hysterectomy isn't necessary. All transition stuff, you don't have to have it, but when you're on testosterone, you don't need to have a hysterectomy. That's a total myth. There is no proof that says that you do. If you haven't had a hysterectomy though, you should continue to have pap smears unless you have your cervix removed. The reason why they say that there's a heightened risk of, cervical blah 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 cancer in trans men is mainly because trans men aren't getting tested, and that's more of an issue than the hysterectomy. So get tested if it's required. I know it's dysphoria inducing, but it's better than having issues. So there are a few different options for hysterectomies. You can have it laparoscopically done, like I did. So I'm just editing, and I realized I completely forgot to continue what I was saying with this point. But I just want to say that the other main option besides laparoscopic, if you don't want to do it laparoscopically, you can also get it done open, is what it's called. So basically what they do is they just do an incision. It's a line incision, basically above your pubic bone, and then they just remove everything out through that way. Usually laparoscopic is sort of slightly lower recovery, and it's usually a little bit easier because it's less invasive, but it really depends on personal preference. Most people I've spoken to have had laparoscopic. Open is really sort of only necessary if that sort of area is all inflamed, like maybe endometriosis or things like that, or in an emergency. Usually they do it open, but besides that, usually people just do it laparoscopically, but open is another option if you'd prefer that, in which basically they do a couple of incisions. I'll show you my incisions, actually. You really can't see them very well. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4. This is about 2 months post-op, so they're healed, but they're still not completely gone, but they'll be gone pretty soon. And so they basically use these for the tools. They use the robot for me, which is kind of cool. And then they did the operation, and then they removed everything out, which was uncomfortable, and that's another thing that I want to talk about. If you're on testosterone for a long time and you don't really use that area, I'm not going to go into too much detail because the thought of going into any more detail literally makes me want to crawl out of my skin because I get so dysphoric. You can have a lot of issues with atrophy, and basically what happens is the cells in that area require estrogen to function appropriately, so including increasing lubrication and things like that. So you can have issues with decreased lubrication and increased sensitivity, increased inflammation, sometimes pain, sometimes itchiness, these sorts of things. Wasn't really an issue for me, but with this surgery, because they remove everything through that, it can be quite traumatizing to the tissue. And so basically I was prescribed a estrogen cream that I had to insert for the 2 months leading up to my surgery, and honestly, it was awful. I absolutely hated it. It made me so uncomfortable. It made me feel so dysphoric, but I am so glad I did, because when I woke up from surgery and I had all of this stupid packing, and I had a catheter, and it was all awful, and it was painful. When they removed it all, it was painful, but it would have been so much worse, and there would have been so much more bleeding if I hadn't have done it. I just know it. So I'm really grateful I did that, even though it sucked. So if you have issues with atrophy, I would consider it. I would consider talking to your doctor about potentially a topical estrogen cream that you can insert so that you can increase the estrogen in the area, which will in turn make the tissue a little bit healthier, so that, when the trauma of things coming out of it and being removed, that will make it better, if that makes sense. Loads of people have hysterectomies without having to get an estrogen cream or anything like that, but I found it was incredibly helpful. That sort of leads into my next thing. Mentally preparing myself for having to pay attention to that part of my body was really uncomfortable and really difficult. I didn't have issues. Once I went on testosterone, I stopped bleeding completely. Haven't had any issues with that at all in the 4 years I've been on testosterone. I was about to say touch wood, but now that I've had hysterectomy, it's not going to be an issue anyway. It was sort of one of those things that I knew having the surgery would be difficult because it's not like top surgery, where, top surgery is something that I have something physical on my body that makes me feel really dysphoric, and I'm going to remove it. And although surgery sucks and no one likes going through surgery, the outcome of that surgery is going to be so good for me. And that's how I feel about phalloplasty and all of these other, gender-confirming surgeries, things like testosterone. There's always going to be a little bit of pain before you get the benefit, whether that be, a jab from a needle or a surgery. And hysterectomy didn't feel like that for me because I didn't really have too much dysphoria about those parts because I didn't think about them, and I didn't have many issues with, the function of those parts. They just basically were sleeping. They didn't do anything. So having to go into a surgery and deal with the trauma of surgery and then not really having a positive outcome from it was quite difficult for me, and was something I definitely had to, not necessarily process, because it wasn't I knew I had to do it, and I knew that there was a reason I was doing it, and I knew that, there was a good outcome of this. The outcome of me having the surgery means that I'm closer to my next surgery, which will be, one of those things that I go into, and when I come out of it, it's going to be immediately better. So I know that there was a benefit for having the surgery, but it was really hard allowing myself to, mentally prepare for it, because it kind of felt like, I don't want this surgery. It's not a surgery that I desired. It's a surgery that I have to have. And that's different to a lot of transition-related things. So it kind of removes a lot of that agency, which is, I know, a reason why a lot of people don't want to have a hysterectomy. Once I actually had the surgery, it wasn't super painful. It was uncomfortable for the first couple of days, but by a week post-op, I was pretty much back to normal. I just couldn't lift anything heavy. This is, all over the place. I'm going to try and edit this to make some sort of sense, but I'm sorry, this is completely all over the place. So something I didn't actually really think about before the surgery, and it was something that I don't really know why I didn't really think about it, because it does make a lot of sense, but you use your core a lot, and having a hysterectomy means that you have to really focus on not utilizing your core for a really long period of time, because whilst you're recovering, you don't want to be pulling anything, you don't want to be pulling stitches, you don't want to be doing anything like that, and we use our cores a fuck ton. Hello. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize until after surgery just how much I used my core. It's kind of like those things with top surgery, obviously, you're so distracting. It's like top surgery. When you have top surgery, you're told you shouldn't move your arms too much, and hysterectomy is kind of the same, but it's a lot harder to do that without your core. I was actually pretty fine after top surgery. I could move pretty well, and although there was a lot of trauma in my chest, there was pain in my chest, so I could, if I moved a certain way, I'd be like, oh, don't do that, because it's pulling. Whereas with my hysterectomy, it wasn't really like that. I wasn't really taking as much care as I should have, because I didn't really have the pain to tell me, and because you use it so much, whether it's sitting up, getting out of bed, walking, standing, all these things, even just standing puts pressure on your pelvic floor muscle. So it was very much a thing that I just had to really just chill, which was difficult for me. I talk about my hysterectomy experience more on my personal channel. If you want to follow that, I'm sorry, I know I'm self-plugging, but I talk more about my hysterectomy on my personal channel, and I'm continuing to talk more. I haven't actually posted many videos recently because of obviously uni, but once that's done, I'm going to be basically going through all the different procedures, all the different types, and talking about it, because I feel like there's just a huge gap of knowledge and information on hysterectomies in general, and just in general, that sort of area. It's something that a lot of trans men basically just ignore, and that can be difficult when you're trying to find information, or when you know you need to have the surgery, or whether you want the surgery. Just something that's not really talked about very much. I'm sorry this video was completely all over the place. I'm going to stop talking now because I've talked way too long. It's been 15 minutes. If you want to know more about hysterectomies, I will put my information in the description and put any information I have about hysterectomies. I'm going to make more videos about it all as well. Anyway, I will see you guys next week once my exams are over, and I will be back to basically regular upload schedule, because I won't have anything to do and I want to try and post a lot more. So I will see you guys next week. Bye.